So in this video we're going to cover graphing linear equations. So the vocabulary for this yellow page is going to be Cartesian plane. The Cartesian plane is going to be the coordinate plane that has a y-axis and also has the x-axis. It is used to graph data points, and it's always going to be giving you points in the x-y way. We also have the slope. The slope is going to be a number that represents the inclination or the steepness, and that's going to be measured with m equals rise over run. Rise is how much it goes up or down, and run how much it moves to the right. And the last term that we need is y-intercept. That's going to be the point in which a curve or a function crosses the y-axis. So that's also where x equals 0. Keep in mind that here's where x equals 0, so you only need to figure out where it crosses. It is crucial that you understand the Cartesian plane. So this part is going to be your y-axis, is going to be a vertical line. This horizontal line is going to be your x-axis. So now let's graph it. It says write the equation in slope-intercept form. So we have the equation right here. It's already in the slope-intercept form, so we don't have to do anything for that part. The next point, it says identify the slope and y-intercept. So we're going to write m, and then we're also going to write b. M is going to be your slope. Keep in mind that the slope is going to be the number next to the variable. So this is going to be the number. So it's going to be 5. And the y-intercept is going to be whatever's next. So that's going to be -1. So I'm going to put -1. The next step says graph the y-intercept. We said that the y-intercept is wherever it crosses this y-axis. Our number is -1. So I'm going to go to -1 right here, and that's where we're going to put our first point. So the first point is going to be at 1, -1. And then the next part says use rise over run to find the second point. So we're going to be paying attention to your slope right here. Your slope is going to be 5, and to put it into a fraction, what we can do is just put a 1 underneath, because 5 divided by 1 is going to be 5, so it doesn't change. So we're going to go right here. We're going to go 5 up, because that's going to be your rise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to move 1 to the right here. So your next point will be right there. Again, and we moved up because of slope is positive. So we go up and to the right. And now the last point is to connect the 2 points. So your line is going to look like that. And we're going to put the arrows because that line never stops. And that's it. That's how you graph a line in the form y equals mx plus b. The vocabulary for this one is going to be exactly the same. Make sure that you're writing down from the previous part. Now, again, we're going to start with the first step, is checking if it's in the slope-intercept form. In this case, we have it in the slope-intercept form, so there's nothing to change. The next portion, it says identify the slope and y-intercept, and we know that the slope in this case is going to be -3, is a number in front of the x, and then the y-intercept is going to be 2. Then it says graph the y-intercept. So in this case, it's going to be 2. So we're going to go to +2, and that's where we're going to put our first point, +2. And then we're going to follow the example from the previous one. We're going to check rise over run. And then in this case, we have option B. The slope is negative, so we're going to go down and to the right. So we're going to change that into a fraction. So -3 is the same thing as saying -3 divided by 1. So we're going to move 3 units down, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to move 1 unit to the right. So that's where you're going to put your next point. Now we're going to connect them. Your line is going to be right there. And again, we're going to put the arrows because it's going to be a line that never ends. And we're done graphing this line. For this one, we actually have something a little bit different. It says write the equation in slope intercept form. In this case, we actually don't have it in slope intercept form. So we need to use some of our previous knowledge to rewrite this in y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to draw a vertical line right here, like we did in the previous yellow pages. I want to subtract 2x from both sides. And now that's going to give you y equals negative 2x minus 1. Now that we have that, we can go into the next step. This is another way to graph this. So in this one, they're telling you to draw a table. So we're going to draw a table of values. That means I'm going to write my x and my y. Your x is going to be your first column and the y is going to be the second. Now the next part says choose 3 different values for x. And now this is my tip for you. Use numbers that are close to 0. At the end of the day, you can choose whatever you want, but the closer to 0, the easier it will be to graph. Especially because you're going to see what the y-intercept is going to be to check if your work is right. So in this case, I'm going to choose the easiest numbers, negative 1, 0, and 1. So now the next part is going to be plugging the x values into the equation. So for the first one, I'm going to put y equals negative 2 times negative 1 minus 1. So for this one, we're going to get negative 2 times negative 1 is going to be positive 2 minus 1. And that's going to be equal to 1. So our first number is going to be negative 1 and 1. The next one, we're going to plug in 0. This is going to be a little bit easier. So y equals negative 2 times 0 minus 1. We know that anything multiplied by 0 gives you 0, so that cancels out. So our number is going to be negative 1. And as you can see right here, your y-intercept was going to be negative 1, so we're doing our work properly. And the last one, we're going to do y equals negative 2 times 1 equals, minus 1. And that's going to give us negative 2 minus 1, which is negative 3. So we actually have 3 points to graph. You can choose 2. In this case, I want to choose the 3 of them. So the first one is x is negative 1 and y is 1. So I want to go to negative 1 and 1. So that will be your first point. The next point is going to be 0, negative 1. So 0, negative 1. And the last one is going to be 1, negative 3. And now we only have, the only thing we need to do is connect the points. That's how the line would be. And you're done graphing it. Now, for this one, we use a table instead of finding the slope and y-intercept, but you would have gotten the same exact answer. Now we're going to be looking at graphing linear equations, but we're going to be looking at special cases. So we're going to do case number 1 and case number 2. For case number 1, it says x is equal to a number. So this is our first case. X is equal to a number. Okay, so when x is equal to a number, go to the x-axis. This is going to be your x-axis, and put a point at the number. So we have positive 4. So our first point is going to be at positive 4. And then it says draw a vertical line through the number. So the only thing I need to do is draw a vertical line. So I'm going to start my vertical line from the top, and it just needs to go through the number, and we're done. Now, let's look at the second case. For the second case, it says y is equal to a number. So in this case, we're going to look if y equals a number, go to the y-axis and put your point at that number. So in this case, we have -2. So I'm going to go to -2. This is where -2 is. And then it says draw a horizontal line through the number. So I'm just going to draw the horizontal line. And it looks like this. The only thing we need to do is put this part and we're done. Again, whenever you have x equals a number, you're going to get a vertical line. Whenever you have y equals a number, you're going to have a horizontal line.